Okay, we're going to do a little update on Miss Lexi. And I think the last video I did, I was riding and we were working on halt, transitions, walk to halt, and even a little bit of backup to try to help build up Lexi's stability and strength in her hindquarter. That's where she really needs the development right now. So the other thing we've been doing in conjunction with that under saddle is tiny circles on the long reins at the walk, and then working with walk trot transitions on these bigger circles on the long reins. So we're just going to bump her up to trot. The trot is a little bit of an easier gait for Lexi compared to her balance at the walk. So in this case, it's a good warm-up for her. And the more transitions, the better. Like if she only trots, I think she's going to have to cough it out here. If she only trots a few strides and then back to walk, it's the transition itself that really does the work. So I sort of play with, my job is the upward transitions, her job is the downward transitions. Oh, there's my helper. Hello, Mercury. Whoop, and she's a little fumbly footed. I literally just got out here. This is our warm-up. So like I said, I don't care if she gives me 2 laps or 2 strides. I'm going to let her walk a little bit, trot a little bit, walk a little bit, trot a little bit. And we'll see what she looks like over the course of 20 minutes maybe, just on this one direction. This is her harder direction. Her right hind leg was the one that was injured, that's sort of been the hardest to get fully functional again. So the right hind on the inside is where we need to really build up some stability and strength. So she's on this bigger circle, not really bent to the outside. She is a little bit when we track left, but really as the hindquarters and the back become more stable, even though you can see she's still struggling with that, and she's a little butt high when she goes into trot. The neck getting straighter and longer is a really good sign that the pelvis is at least getting laterally stable. So not fully engaged sort of front to back, which is more of a balance between the braking and pushing, which is why the transitions are just gold nuggets of developing balance. But at least when she goes to lengthen her neck and she uncurls it, because her habit was always to over curl the neck and kind of round it and put her nose back in her chest. And you'll still see a little arc through the mane, but it's working its way out to where she's getting a full lengthening through that neck, which is really a reflection of the muscular change. That's sort of a chain of muscle and soft tissue. What we see through her choice of use in the neck is really reflecting that whole chain of muscle and soft tissue that supports the spine through the back and the pelvis and the hindquarters. So it's all kind of connected. And for her to have her neck a little straighter instead of bent to the outside, right? And even though she's starting off pretty heavy on the forehand and not really wanting to hold the trot, by letting her make a downward transition whenever she chooses, she's only going to maintain a trot when she feels reasonably stable and comfortable. Otherwise, all horses choose a downward transition because they lost stability or it's getting uncomfortable to maintain that faster speed. So by letting her choose the downward transitions, right, I'm strengthening both the braking and the pushing mechanism that are related to getting that front to back engagement of the pelvis as well as lifting the back. And I don't have to let her walk for 5 minutes. Like I'm asking her to trot again after just a couple of strides of walk. But if I made her maintain gait and maintain direction, I'm going to teach her, and this is kind of what we're overcoming, is she learned how to maintain trot and canter in a very dysfunctional coordination. So the movement never really got good, and then it got to the point where she was a little unsafe to ride. So now she's perfectly safe to ride, but really developing her balance at the trot is still kind of a work in progress. And I may throw in a canter transition just to see what she does with it, but the trot is just one of those gaits that is, some horses, it's their easiest gait. It's where they relax the most. It's where they can find more suppleness through their back, through their top line. And even if it's not a great trot, some horses find the trot easier than the walk or the canter. And horses that have a really bad trot tend to prefer walk and canter, believe it or not. Those are more related. The trot's a bit different. So we're just going to watch her play with it. And like I said, she can make this downward transition whenever she wants. Right? She goes really kind of deep on the forehand, but every downward transition that she chooses is where she's learning how to control her own body weight. It's where she's learning to use her back and hindquarter to slow down, which is not only just used for slowing down, that's why it's called braking, and that's spelled B-R-A-K-E, braking. It's also how they stabilize their motion when they're moving, right? It's how they control their body weight so that they don't overload the front legs. And her braking and pushing mechanisms were not really strong. In fact, when we started with her, her brakes were kind of shot. So this has been a rebuilding of the braking mechanism. And that's why she was getting a little unsafe to ride, is because she didn't have that ability to stabilize herself at the faster speeds or control her body weight during motion. She started to just use momentum. So she would go faster and faster and get really anxious. And even though momentum is sort of a stabilizing force, it doesn't really give the same sense of control. So there's not a lot of relaxation in it. It creates a lot more anxiety in horses. Even though she's going fast and big, she doesn't feel comfortable or in control of her movement 100% internally. Yeah, so she's getting a bit better. And by standing still and using the long reins, what I'm helping her with is keeping her back and hindquarter level and letting this size circle sort of encourage the hind legs to stay up underneath her a bit more. And that's why she breaks gait so much, right? Because it's hard for her to engage her hind end, right? So she either falls forward to the point that the long reins kind of increase force and she stops. That's better, right? Or she can't quite keep her hind legs under her and gets a little unstable, so she stops. Very good. Yeah, and even though her neck is down, when we see her drop the pole and curl the neck, that's just because she's got too much weight on her front legs, right? When she uncurls the neck, that's when, and keeps it really long, where the mane between the saddle and her pole, where that starts to look straighter rather than curled, that's how I know from her dynamic change of posture that she's feeling more stable and more comfortable in keeping the pelvis engaged and using her back and hindquarter to start controlling her body weight. As long as she's struggling with her own body weight just falling forward, she's going to keep trying to cheat with the neck. right? She's going to over curl that neck as a way to sort of hold her stability through her forehand because she's got too much weight on the front legs. Good girl. But as she plays with the trot, she always gets a little bit calmer, a little bit more thoughtful, where she used to be a really anxious horse. Working at trot really relaxes her. So it must do something physically. And during the trot, the back muscles work a lot less than they do at the walk or the canter. And because she's so tight through her hindquarter and back, that's probably why she prefers the trot. It just helps her release all that chronic tension through her back and hindquarters. Good, yeah. And also knowing that it's okay to break gait, that she's not going to get in trouble, she's not going to get chased or have a whip cracked. It's like sometimes she chooses to go back up to trot because she's working on it and she's enjoying it, right? It's not easy for her, but as we play with this, like I said, we'll do about 20 minutes and just kind of watch her slowly get a little better and a little better. And all I'm doing with the long reins is helping her not tilt to the inside or the outside. So I'm helping her control her body weight between her left set of legs and her right set of legs. And then working on a circle with transitions is encouraging the front back balance, but that's something she's got to kind of figure out by experimenting and thinking and comparing and seeing what she can do. So it's a matter of practice and repetition. I can't make her, none of us can make a horse instantly find balance. And I know that's kind of the myth out there, that if we gave the perfect aids or the right support, they would magically just come into balance. But that's really a bit naive about how complex coordination is, how complex bodies are. And it's sort of like you can't really make someone learn to ride a bicycle or learn how to swim. Those are coordinations that we have to discover for ourselves. Or even drive a stick shift. That takes a little bit of time and repetition to get that coordination. And then once you get the coordination, it feels easy. But the process of getting that coordination, if we think we can do it for the horse, we usually screw it up pretty bad. If we guide the horse, right? So the long reins we could sort of think of as her water wings or training wheels, where I can guide her a bit, but really she's got to figure it out. And so the calmer she is, the more thoughtful she is, and after, 110,000 transitions, she's going to rebuild her brakes, rebuild her accelerator, right? And start to develop a better and better trot. And in this process, we're improving balance overall, but in particular, sort of targeting her weakest area, which is really the engagement of the hindquarters and the lifting of the back. The straightness was also an issue that took a little while to resolve, but it's not as big a deal as trying to really get her engaged again in the pelvis and start lifting the back. That's proved to be much more difficult for her. And that's not always the case for every horse. Good. And you'll see sometimes she chooses to hold the trot for a little while. Then she'll go through periods where she breaks every few strides. And all of that is her experimenting, literally learning through trial and error. And so if I put pressure on her to maintain gait, a couple of things happen. She quits considering how she feels. She thinks more about me than what she's feeling internally. And one of the ways to get a horse to really develop balance is that they feel safe enough to focus internally and start seeking comfort, right? So that's why I also stay on one direction for a while, is because it takes a little while to make those changes and rearrange coordination in a way that's going to be more comfortable. And I always know it's going to lead to better balance if the horse is seeking comfort, because correct mechanical use of the skeleton is always more efficient and more comfortable. So by comparing, by giving her a little support, like I said, water wings or training wheels, right? I'm guiding, I'm asking for the upward transition, I'm allowing her to choose the downward. And so we're just having this conversation to see what she can figure out by going walk, trot, walk, trot, walk, trot, over and over and over. So there's no pressure. There'll be some good ones, there'll be some bad ones, but over I think we've got 5 more minutes, right? We might start to see a little rhythm develop. We might start to see her change her neck use, less curling, more straightness. We might start to see that the hind legs start to look a little less stiff, a little more limber again, or not. We might not see any of that. This might just be one of many sessions, right? And because transitions are so important to engagement and lifting the back, when I ride her, it's easier for her to figure out the change we're looking for between walk and halt. It keeps the stress off of her and really helps her discover those hind legs. But with no weight on her back, it's a little easier, and she seems to figure out more if I play between trot and walk. And every horse is different. You just have to kind of experiment and see where do they find calmness, where do they start to get a sense of ease, where do they start to kind of turn their ears out or turn their ears half back, which shows they're mentally concentrating on what they're feeling. And then it's just a matter of time and repetition. And that part, I have no idea how long it's going to take because it's complicated, right? We've got tendon, ligament, and muscle use. We've got joint function. We've got all kinds of things throughout the entire body that have to adapt and change. And being on the forehand this much also tells me she's going to be strong in the wrong muscles and weak in the muscles that would give her a more balanced trot. So that's another reason to kind of welcome a horse breaking gait and making 10,000 transitions per session, right? And you can see she's responsive enough to go back to trot. I'm not having to really push her to get back to trot. And sometimes she'll hold it longer, sometimes she won't. That's up to her. We've got about 3 more minutes, and then I'm just going to run out of energy. I go 20 minutes of walk and trot on one direction is a bit of a workout, right? And she's over 20, so I can't push it. She's fit enough to do 20 minutes of walk and trot, but that's kind of our maximum time for practice. Otherwise, she's going to get physically stressed, and then I'm not going to get anything good once she's tired or fatigued or breathing too hard. So nothing super noticeable and tangible. There's just a little more rhythm, a little more ease. We've got 2 more minutes to go. I think we're kind of hitting her limit. That head shaking is a good sign. Yeah, and the neck straightening out a bit is another good sign. and a little bit more consistent in her rhythm and stride length, which I don't care if it's tiny little short strides and a slow rhythm. It's like she's going to have to experiment with too slow, too fast, adjust her stride length, and figure out what is it going to take for her to find more comfort in the trot before we run out of energy. Good, and that was her idea. So we'll just do one more. Yeah, and she's still very much on the forehand. I know that. She's too heavy on the forehand, but with the long rein support, at least helping her stay stable left to right with her body weight and doing transition after transition after transition, I know she's going to keep getting better at that. So I'm just going to let her walk a little bit, and then we will do the same thing the other way, and then I'm going to ride her. I'm going to keep the ride short, but I might tape that today too.